Well, good afternoon. Bonjour, Quay. Jalasi, Deloisi, Dennis. Before we begin our update on our recovery today, I do want to take the time to recognize that today we mark the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. This is a day that is dedicated to the children who died in residential schools, the survivors who made it home, and their families and communities who continue to live with the trauma of it. Today is also about awareness, that we try to understand what a horrible stain this is on our country's past and how our generation and the generations to come can use this past to build a better future and a better country. It's about the recognition of those who were taken, those who never made it home, and those who continue to live with the trauma. Today is a day that we remember them, to honor them, to dignify them, to recognize them, to love them, to remember them. And it is a day to support those who try every day to cope with the loss and difficulty and who walk the cautious steps forward on the path to reconciliation through understanding, knowledge, and forgiveness. Today is also about accountability for all of us. This is a history and a reality that we've all inherited. And like any inheritance or history, the only way to move forward is to listen and to learn about that history, no matter how difficult it may be to hear it, to understand why and how it happened, to talk about it openly and honestly, to commit ourselves to making sure nothing like that should ever happen again, to recognize the challenges and impacts of it, and to work together to make a positive change. Today, I'm joined by Minister Natalie Jameson, Minister of Education, Early Learning, Lifelong Learning. Natalie, I mess that up all the time. She'll be providing an update on schools and childcare. We have Tanya Mullally again from EMO. We have Kim Griffin, of course, from Maritime Electric, and we're joined online by Bill Lawlor from Canadian Red Cross. I'll just begin to say that today, as we announced yesterday, we'll be officially launching the Emergency Jobs Initiative. This program provides nonprofit organizations, municipalities, and private businesses with 100% wage subsidy for wages up to $15 an hour for 4 weeks to help with efforts for those who need it. After the 4 weeks of funding, if more work is continued, it will be at a 75% rate and will continue for up to 14 weeks. This program, as I said yesterday, is for those who might have lost their jobs because in a seasonal business that isn't going to continue because of Hurricane Fiona. And we will be as flexible as possible with all islanders who will be looking to take advantage of this and to get to work to rebuild our province. This program can be accessed through the Department of Fisheries and Communities, and more information will be available online later today. I also indicated yesterday that the impacts of Fiona have hit everyone, and they've hit everyone hard. If you're fortunate enough to have insurance, some of your food losses or other impacts may be covered, but many islanders don't have that. That's why we are partnering with the Canadian Red Cross to offer those island households facing financial hardship with $250 of financial assistance. This can be for things for uninsurable losses of food. Maybe it can help with gas for the generator or other basic needs. The Red Cross is working as fast as possible to administer these funds and can offer assistance through e-transfer, through gift cards, and if required, checks can even be issued. That might take a little bit longer. Island households can register with the Red Cross, and I believe Bill will be able to provide more additional information on this and answer any questions of how the program will be administered, but we really appreciate partnering with the Canadian Red Cross to help as many islanders as we can. Additionally, most Access P.E.I. locations are open across P.E.I. today and will be again tomorrow morning. They're doing their best to keep up with what is a very high volume of calls from islanders looking for assistance with debris cleanup. We have also launched an online form and email address that islanders can register with us to reduce the call volume that we're receiving. Our teams at Transportation are triaging these requests, and right now, because of the challenges we faced, We are first focusing on primary residences where trees and debris are a safety concern or access to their property is not yet available. We know very well that there are damages to cottages and seasonal properties, but we're trying to focus our efforts first on primary residences and make our way through that in the days ahead. We have had over 700 online submissions since 2 p.m., and we fielded over 1,000 calls already, so I want to thank the teams at Access P.E.I. for their hard work and kindness, and for Islanders again for their understanding and patience. Some other good news, rural transit services will resume on Monday, October 3rd across PEI, and we would encourage Islanders to book ahead, as that has been a very popular service since it has been introduced. I also wanted to tell Islanders that I have been in contact over the last couple of days with a number of our telecommunications providers that have customers in our province. I have been reassured that they're doing everything they can to keep the cellular network operating as best they can, and I've asked for them to ensure that EMO has the most up-to-date information on their needs going forward. And I have mentioned to them that we will need to do, like other provinces have committed to, a bit of a post-mortem when this is all done on the cellular network in Prince Edward Island, as what else we can be doing to make sure if we have to deal with something like this again, heaven forbid, that we can be more resilient and flexible. Kim from Maritime Electric will be providing a more in-depth update. More and more Islanders are coming online, but we know that there are pockets of PEI that have extensive damage that are taking additional efforts and time to restore. Record numbers of crews are here from across PEI or across Canada and have been, added to try to work through this as fast as we can, as fast as possible. But we do know that some will remain without power for at least another 48 or 72 hours. I have made a request to the Minister of National Defence for additional military resources for an additional week. They have been a godsend here. They've been working closely with our crews and with Maritime Electric, and we could use them for a little bit longer. And a little bit more of them would be even more helpful. For those communities and households that are going to be impacted with continued outage, we are targeting our government resources through EMO and other partners. We want to ensure that there's access to warming centres, that Islanders and their families have access to supplies and necessities. We are identifying those in affected areas, and we will work to ensure we'll provide as much as we can, as fast as we can. And as more and more communities and households come online, we will redeploy any and all of those resources to help until we're through this together. So I know that's a lot, as it often is in these events, in these cases, but I will now turn it over to Minister Jameson, who will give us an update on schools and childcare and what the first of next week looks like. So, to you.
Thank you, Premier. Good afternoon. Bonjour. Kwe. Before I begin, I too want to acknowledge that today is the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Indigenous learning is embedded in our school curriculum throughout the year. However, this past week would typically have been an important learning opportunity for our students, a time for teachers to encourage a deeper reflection and a dialogue on the relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples, and meaningful discussions about the history and the legacy of the residential school system. I encourage parents and guardians to take a few minutes today and talk with their children about the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, about the history of our great nation and the path we are on towards reconciliation. Hurricane Fiona left us with a lot of cleanup across our province and our schools. Education and being in the classroom is so important for our students, and I want to thank all of our partners who have been involved in the cleanup efforts to have as many students as possible back to class next week. Safety continues to be our main priority, and we have had structural engineers evaluating our damaged buildings and fire inspectors assessing all of our schools. We are happy to say that contractors have already been able to seal up the roofs and repair damage at the majority of schools impacted by Hurricane Fiona. This morning, we launched a web page which lists all of our schools and identifies their readiness to open on Monday. Each school is flagged as either green, yellow, or red. Green will be schools that have been assessed and we know are ready to open on Monday. They are good to go. Yellow are schools that we are still working on, but they are almost ready. These are buildings with no power or are waiting for phone lines to come back online, or restoration work is underway and near completion. Red are schools we know will not be able to open on Monday. This webpage will be updated twice daily at 12 noon and at 5 p.m., so please check back regularly to see the status of your child's school. Right now, we have 31 schools that we know will be able to open on Monday. There are 27 schools we are still waiting on for confirmation on, and 4 schools we know will not be able to open on Monday. Damage at Cardigan Consolidated spans sections of the entire building. This could take a few weeks to repair. Correspondence went out last night to parents explaining to them that Cardigan Consolidated students will be relocated to a dedicated wing at Montague Regional High School on Wednesday, October 5th. PSB and staff from Cardigan will take the time they need on Monday and Tuesday to gather their resources, set up classrooms at Montague Regional, and to work out logistics such as busing and schedules. Montague Regional High will be closed on Monday to allow time for the staff to set up. Classes will resume on Tuesday for Montague Regional High School students. École Evangeline has significant damage. The CSLF has secured the grounds, which are typically used for l'Exposition Agricole et le Festival Acadien. It has the space and amenities they require. They are working on transforming the space into usable classrooms for students and staff. More information will be coming in the days ahead on their return to class. There has been a significant amount of work completed on Queen Charlotte Intermediate. However, the building is not quite ready to welcome students. We will need at least a few more days before Queen Charlotte will open. And we just heard, actually, before I was heading into this briefing, that it is unlikely that West Kent and Donagh Regional will be open on Monday, but with further details to come on that as well. I do want to be clear, however, that none of our schools will be moving to remote learning at this time. With the power outages and disruptions in web connections, virtual learning is not a viable option right now. We ask for your continued patience. The PSB and CSLF will be contacting parents directly with all the details on how this impacts your children's classes, their busing schedules, and any other necessary details you need. We appreciate our school bus drivers who have been driving their routes, checking to see if they are accessible and that students' stops are safe and free from debris. After Dorian, there were regions of the province where we asked parents to drive their children to school because certain bus routes were impassable. We aren't at that stage yet, and I know EMO is doing all they can to clear our roads, but that is certainly something that we may have to consider as we get closer to Monday. On another note, we have decided to cancel the PD Day, which was originally scheduled for next Friday, October 7th. I know this may be disappointing to some, but we do feel that with the lost instructional days, this decision is in the best interest of our children and our families. Parents are reminded that if you booked a PD camp or childcare for that day, it is your responsibility to cancel those arrangements. As it relates to student services, student wellbeing teams are up and running. Respite care is being arranged for Monday for families who may be impacted by extended closures or relocations. Your school student services team will be in touch with families directly to discuss these arrangements. The mental health of our children is so important. Please know that the Kids Help Phone and our provincial mental health lines are up and running, offering 24/7 confidential support. The school food program will be up and running on Monday at all schools which are operational. We don't want anyone to go without food. The reception centers will be open throughout the weekend, so if you need food, water, power, please reach out. We are so thankful to the many staff and volunteers who have been working at these centers and how, as a community, we are working together to support one another. The military supports have also been a tremendous help, clearing the grounds at our schools and our childcare centers. We continue to ask the public to stay off the school properties until school classes resume. So I know this is a lot of information, and I do want to thank you once again for your patience and understanding. I certainly wish you all the very best in the days and weeks ahead. And with that, I will pass it along to Tanya Mullally with the MO.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon. Welcome. I guess I would like to also just acknowledge the Day of Truth and Reconciliation and just share that at the beginning of our operational briefing this morning at our Provincial Emergency Operations Center, even though we remain operational, we did take time to acknowledge the day and ask people as they continue through the work for the day that they, reflect, take that moment and kind of throughout the work of the day, continue to be respectful and reflectful. I mentioned yesterday about, I spoke about the 4 phases of emergency management, of mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. And I know that a lot of people are, as power comes back on, are starting to move toward that recovery mode. I just wanted to share that we still stand at a response mode as our primary focus. We are still actively doing recovery work. As like debris cleanup, that type of thing. But we basically pace ourselves to kind of the slowest or until people still have need, we will remain at that response level. So noting that, we know that this weekend, a lot of people are going to be out doing some of those recovery cleanup activities around their properties. And we just ask you, want to actually share a couple of messages from our fire marshal's office today that I heard in the operational brief this morning, that they were getting some emergency calls in regards to people clearing brush, clearing trees, and having some close calls and some emergency calls around trees. So we just ask you again to be safe. Again, the messages I keep saying every day, be safe around that. If you're not comfortable using chainsaws or moving around trees, that type of thing, you should be calling a professional or waiting for support wherever it might come from. But do it safely. Continue with generators if you're using them, if you don't have power, barbecues, that type of thing. I think that's kind of actually most of what I have to say. It's a shorter one today, and I will hand it over actually to Bill Lawlor with Canadian Red Cross to provide some information on the supports they'll be offering. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya, and good afternoon, everyone. As the Premier mentioned, Canadian Red Cross is partnering and pleased to do so to support their efforts to provide some financial assistance to those who need it the most. And we know that operations and individuals and businesses, people have been impacted by this. So how this will function in the coming days, we will be announcing shortly, probably over the next couple of days or so, some more specific timelines. We're still in the process of finalizing this in a way that will help to deliver the financial aid as quickly as possible, particularly to those who need it the most. Just to reiterate, this will be $250 per household, not per individual within the household, but on a per household basis. In order to access this, or in order to access any assistance for that matter with the Canadian Red Cross, including this that is on behalf of the government of Prince Edward Island, it is imperative that individuals and households register with the Red Cross. You can do this if you have access to the internet, for those of you with power restorations and full service restoration, at redcross.ca/Hurricane Fiona. If you don't have access to the internet, please call our call center at 1-800-863-6582 to register. It's important to note that registration is open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week until further notice. I can also share that we have up to today, 4,350 individuals who have already registered through the Canadian Red Cross. Over the last several days throughout Atlantic Canada, we are at almost 35,000 people who have registered with the Canadian Red Cross specific to the impact for Hurricane Fiona. We know there have been some delays from islanders being able to register simply due to the impact which has been realized throughout their lives and certainly their properties. And again, due to some disruptions of utilities and not perhaps being able to reach us, or simply at this stage not yet being aware of this opportunity to register with us. So please do so. The method of distribution, the fastest way to get this, will be for those who do electronic banking. If you do not do electronic banking, don't worry, you'll still be eligible and you'll be able to receive this. However, it may take a little more time. So as the Premier mentioned, that will be in the form of check as an option, if that is your preferred option. Another option will be a prepaid credit card that is essentially accepted anywhere credit cards are accepted throughout the island. Again, that will take a little bit longer, but those are the details we're working through right now. Please, if you go to the office today or a Red Cross location throughout the island, this funding is not available right yet. We are really just going through and finalizing those details. So I'm very much aware, we understand, and we have great empathy for everything that people are going through right now, but it will take just a few more days to iron this out. But we promise a swift response to being able to support this. That's pretty much what the service is with this particular piece. We are supporting other activities on behalf of the province of Prince Edward Island. We've been engaged in working with Tanya and her team at EMO since the very beginning, prior to Fiona even arriving. We've been operating a couple of shelters that have moved around a little bit, depending on need. We have some individuals who have been placed in a hotel. And again, we're only placing folks in a hotel because you can appreciate the very limited amount of inventory of hotel rooms on the island for the most urgent needs. And that would be those the elderly who have some mobility struggles, any youth or children or adults who would have other special needs that would otherwise make it not able or suitable to be in a congregate shelter with many others, with less privacy and so on. Again, inventory is a big matter right now for us, and we're working with the province each and every time we have a referral or someone reaches out to us to express an urgency of needing shelter. We'll either guide you towards right now, although there are many shelters throughout the province, as has been addressed here today and in previous days, we are operating one within the city of Charlottetown at the Murchison Center. And if for some reason, if that becomes full with individuals requiring our support, we have plans in place to expand and move to other locations as well. I would also just like to, allow everybody to know that the Canadian Red Cross is here to support Islanders for as long as it takes. We know the devastation is vast, and we know it's tip to tip and all points in between. If this goes on for a much longer term than what we are all used to, the Canadian Red Cross has the ability to bring in extra supports from off-island, and people are indeed on standby to augment our capacity as needed, when needed. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Thank you, Premier King, Minister Jameson, Tanya, and Bill. I'm going to refer to my notes if that's okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I first want to begin by recognizing today the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on behalf of Maritime Electric and our entire Hurricane Fiona restoration team. As our teams continue to work today restoring power, please accept our respect and sincere hope for a better future together amongst us and the generations ahead of us. May I please also begin by saying how much behind-the-scenes incredible work I have seen so far together from the province, municipalities, communities, partners, businesses, and the list goes on. There's not a group or organization of the 60 or so working together on this plus that are not doing the most they can to help us, and it truly is a team effort. While the obvious question is when all the power will be back on, there are some behind-the-scenes teams and heroes and dedicated people making sure that you are safe and get what you need. Things you might not think about, from police help to water testing, fire crews, people trying to make sure they run payments to get it in your hands, food, supplies, warming shelters, batteries, smoke carbon monoxide detectors, generators, fueling stations, medical staff, all not only to our crews but to you and to the whole island. And it truly is a team effort. Our crews have made progress restoring power island-wide. We have restored power to almost 47,000 customers since this time almost 7 days ago when we were hit on Saturday, when almost the whole island had no power. We have 75% of the west on, about 60% of some parts of Charlottetown and West Royalty and the P.E.I. area, about 42% of the downtown Charlottetown area, and about 45% of down east. We are working to restore now about 35,500 customers. We were able to restore about 1,000 customers while I've been here.
but we are estimating about trying and targeting to get about 6,500 customers on today is our goal. We've had some key highlights and progress already today. Parts of Cardigan, large areas in Vernon River, and majority of Cardigan, large areas in Vernon River, and Montague to Peters Road, Brush Wharf Road, 3 subdivisions in Stratford, parts of West Royalty and the Maypoint area, about 20% more of Tignish, and we expect the causeway work completed today at the North River Causeway. Other places we are making progress in the following areas: Morel, Kensington, Rattenbury, Wellington, parts of Sherwood, Bedford, Strathgartney, Tracadie, Surrey, Wood Islands, Brackley Point, Normans Road, and the North River Causeway, as I had mentioned, as well as Macadam Road, North Side Road. This does not necessarily mean that all these customers were restored, but the crews are optimistic in making more progress there. Work continues to address the high priority customers in each district, as I'd mentioned in these briefings in East, West, and Central. These include farms, customers, businesses, medical centers, gas stations, schools, seniors' homes. They're not all done yet. There are currently 200 crews on the road, as well as resources with the Armed Forces and Forestry, transportation crews, and so many frontline people helping not only Maritime Electric, but every islander. Our Maritime Electric crews are working closely with our Fortis family of companies from Newfoundland Power, Fortis Ontario, Fortis Alberta, BC, and other utilities, including New Brunswick Power, St. John Energy, Summerside Electric, as well as the staff at the Energy Corporation have been assisting us immensely, and other groups, and a number of small contractors, both from on-island and off-island from across the country. Once again, out of 147,266 poles island-wide, the 531 poles that I've been reporting and speaking about over the last 24 hours are being restored steadily, and our crews are very optimistic about this work. We have to date over 18,800 phone calls and messages from our customers in our on-island contact center, which continues to be open 24/7 to assist our customers. It's your neighbors here answering your calls, and call us day or night, and we will remain open until the end of this. Today, we have about 1,052 customer masts reported broken. Please continue to call us if you have issues on your home that your masts are down. You can see it on our website if you need that information, what that means, and you can also speak to a customer service rep. It helps with our restoration efforts as we begin to restore more communities. And as we get those communities back on, our next phase is individual outages all across Prince Edward Island. Some of this work will require help from outside electricians as well as Maritime Electric. Around-the-clock personnel are working together. I want to stress again how meticulous this type of restoration work is, and it takes a team of people working closely together to safely make repairs and re-energize the system line by line. This work is done methodically by our crews on the ground, as well as the Energy Control Center and our teams. There's an incredible component of safety, but we can't take a chance on any shortcuts in this area. A number of people have asked, can it go any faster? Is there any components of the work that you're doing from this perspective that can be shortened? Are you efficient? We are. The safety of our crews and the public is always our number one concern and our focus as we restore power. While we do not expect restoration efforts to continue, every day we continue to make more progress and restore more power. Today is perfect weather for our crews and all of our crews across P.E.I. and the team to work on the Fiona restoration efforts. If you need to pass by a work site, please do slow down and be mindful for your safety and the safety of the crews. As we continue to re-energize the system, downline should always be treated as live or energized. In terms of some key pockets and areas of the community, and as I mentioned yesterday, potentially into the Sunday and Monday restoration, we want to help communities continue to plan. I'm going to list off a number of communities that we're also going to have on our website, but I want to share it with you live now. Minister Jameson did make an update on the schools, and depending on your area, there just may be some areas that are still hit pretty hard, but we also want to make sure that you and your community know and can plan that these are major pockets that we still don't think we're going to have on over the next couple of days, or parts are still partially energized. East Point to Surrey, Cardigan North, Launching, Primrose, Elmira, Northside Road, Cape Bear, Coved, Brackley, Strathgartney, York Point Road, Cornwall Ferry Road, parts of Charlottetown, Murray River, Murray Harbour, Stanley Bridge, Pownal, and T Hill. That is not an exhaustive list, but of these communities, we have pockets that we know are not going to be on and are going to need assistance. And as the Premier mentioned, we're working directly with the province to help find areas that may already be identified or have a warming shelter, but make sure that they're not being closed down because people are going to need them. To our Maritime Electric crews and Fiona restoration team, I want to say an additional thank you to you and your families for giving us the team to help our customers. Many, many of our Powerline technicians team and our staff across our company have damages in their homes, and they never blinked when we said we needed them. Thank you. And to our customers, thanks for helping each other and others that don't have power yet. A call to seniors, anyone living alone, or a wave in the window, a chat on the doorstep, or in your building where you may live. To everyone and anyone, and to many New Islanders who may be scared too, that our crews are feeling optimistic every day about these repairs still ahead of us to get to you, and I assure you that we're on it. We will be into Sunday and Monday in our communities in terms of restoration efforts. We're sorry about that. But we are working very hard, so I promise you that, and we promise you that to Prince Edward Island. To our customers, please do know that we are here for you, and our entire restoration team is working hard every day to safely restore power to everyone as quickly as possible. Thank you, and I will hand this back over to you, Premier King.
Very much, Kim, and thank you, Bill, Tanya, and Minister for the updates. And as often is the case, that is a lot for all of our friends in the media to digest. So we will be as patient and open as we can be here, and we're very blessed to have a couple in the room live and in 3D here. So maybe we can start here. I'm going to start with Sheehan maybe from CBC first, and this is maybe the small step back to normal as we have some more people live in here. So.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me here. So first question, I was just hoping the financial assistance that was announced today, is it possible that we can expand on that a little bit? Who qualifies, when it will be available? Just kind of really clearly lay out what they need to go through to get it and what the overall budget is for them.
Yeah, well, I'll start just with the overall budget, and then I'll turn it over to Bill to sort of how it might actually be administered. But essentially, we want it to be for anyone who needs it as quickly as possible, obviously dealing with the most urgent cases first. This would be part of the $50 million package that we worked out. It's really hard to put a dollar figure on this because we don't know how many households will, actually access this. But, there's 70,000 some households in the country or in the province. So, but Bill, would you want to just share a little bit more about what the process might be to how Islanders might go to begin to access this?
Thank you, Premier. Happy to provide some further details. So, as mentioned earlier, once individuals register with us, and to the Premier's point, the challenge is that we really don't have a 100% accuracy in terms of how many households does this impact. We know the impact has been vast throughout the island, and we certainly know that the other utility disruptions have also been quite extensive all over throughout the province. So once people register with us, and if it takes longer for you to register, certainly there's no need to panic for anyone throughout the island. If it takes you a few more days by the time this message gets to you, but please, if you are hearing this and listening, please let your neighbors, your friends, families, and loved ones know about this. But you register online through the Canadian Red Cross. And if you have an email address, we will validate everything that you have put in. We have systems in place that will validate that you did put in an accurate email address. If for some reason it's showing that it wasn't, you made a mistake, made an error, there was human error in the data entry, either if you were doing it yourself or if someone who was doing it on the phone to support you made a mistake, we will find that out, but we will reach out to you because we are also going to ask you your phone number. We're asking you for your primary address. And then we have to go through a bit of a process to make sure that you as the individual, the head of household, you are who you say you are, and you live where you say you live. And that's just the easiest way to say it, but we want to verify, and we have systems in place. And this is more about, although it's certainly a very, very low percentage, but unfortunately, during times like this, we see the best in people, and we also see some opportunities where some will try to take advantage of assistance offers like this. So we will make sure we have the ability to verify that, in fact, your address is indeed an actual address that is connected to your name on the island. If there's a bit of a hiccup there, and a good example for this would be if somebody just recently moved to PEI, or you've just recently moved within PEI and your address changed over the last few months, for example. That's going to tell us something. Oh, maybe we need to look a little bit closer to make sure that this individual, that this household is who they say they are. And that's what's going to take us a little bit longer to establish and set up some of that in-person support. So we'll be able to, not unlike any other, I guess, application or verification step that you would do. Perhaps you have a picture of your driver's license or your driver's license with you with your updated address or some mail or some other factor. But we'll make sure that we describe that to everyone who may be not able to receive the assistance right away. However, if you're verified and everything checks out, again, the fastest method for this would be through internet banking for electronic funds transfer. And for those who don't have it, we will reach out. So if you didn't have an email address, for example, when you reached out to us, maybe you don't have an email, and there's certainly some that don't. That's okay. We'll reach out to you by phone and determine what's the best method for you to receive this. Would you prefer a prepaid credit card with that balance on there, or would you prefer to have a check that you can then deposit on your own and on your own terms? It's really what works best for you. But at the risk of being repetitive, the most efficient and fastest way for you to receive this injection of funds on behalf of the province of Prince Edward Island will be through electronic funds transfer. So I'll stop there, and if there's any further questions, I'm happy to entertain that. Thank you.
Another question for Bill, probably. How much has the Red Cross raised for Fiona relief? How much will be spent on PEI, and what will it be spent on?
Yeah, thanks very much for that question. We are certainly extraordinarily pleased with the response from people not only from Canada, but really throughout the world who have been contributing to this appeal because of what everybody has witnessed, not just within the communities of impact, but you can't turn away from it in the media and social media what's happening. I can tell you as of this morning, we've raised $10.7 million for this appeal. That is certainly an enormous amount for us to be able to collect on behalf of Atlantic Canadians. To your direct question on what is the percentage or how much would be dedicated to Islanders, it's too early for us to be able to go down that road yet, for the simple reason, as I stated earlier, we don't have a total number yet of impact. The other thing that's important for us as the Red Cross to do is to not duplicate other assistance programs. And certainly over the last several days, Premier King has announced a number of initiatives to help get some urgent assistance to folks right away. So again, we don't want to be, not to say that the needs aren't great, we understand that they are, but we just want to make sure that we're not duplicating something that's already in play. And that's all that you can, so that's, we're talking about within Prince Edward Island right now, but that's the same conversations that are happening in the other provinces that have also received some significant impact. Typically, what will happen is it will be in a bit of a staged or phased approach. So, we won't wait until everybody registers before we do anything. That certainly will take too long because we know some people, it will take quite some time for them to register. We also know, and this is, again, I would encourage every Islander who knows someone who has been impacted, it's the Maritime way. I'm okay. I don't need any help. I don't need extra assistance. Give it to someone who needs it more than me. We really, really compel you to register with the Red Cross. And we're sure that the needs are greater than what some people, would be willing to let on. And it's a bit of a pride matter. And we understand it. But this is assistance that is available to you for those who need it. So please register and we will get the funds to you as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Bill. Just another question. How long will the warming centers and emergency shelters be open around the province?
That's a great question. I appreciate you raising that. I mean, essentially, they'll be open for as long as we need them to be open. I mean, obviously, as more and more communities come online, there'll be less need for them. But, as Kim has said, the process for Maritime Electric will include pockets of communities. So just because 60% of a community might be on, there's still a need there. So I guess we'll just kind of assess that on a day-by-day basis. But as long as they need to be open, they'll be there. And we'll redeploy those resources if they're not needed to other places to make sure we're doing as much as we can for everybody.
And question for Kim. Are there more crews coming to PEI? Where are they coming from? How many have arrived since yesterday? And are there more going to be arriving this weekend?
There's more crews. We're at 200 crews right now. I'm not sure how many just arrived yesterday and into this morning, but I know there's dozens. They have a safety protocol that they go through in the mornings, and we're also trying to find some accommodations for them. Do you mind if I just noticed in my notes that in terms of those areas when the Premier had mentioned the EMO stations, I realized that I did not mention Mount Stewart and East Royalty and Morel in addition to my list in terms of those areas and those communities. So, and I neglected, Premier, to note that we're going to put those on our website in addition to working with the EMO organization to make sure with the communities across the province that we're able to provide better updates on that every day. So my apologies on that. I was talking too fast, I think.
I just want to confirm there's so over 200 and dozens arriving into the weekend. Is that right? Okay, perfect. And where are they coming from?
I can give you a complete list of that because I do not trust my memory. But you can, definitely we have Nova Scotia as well as New Brunswick. We have Newfoundland, our Newfoundland Power sister company, as well as Fortis Ontario, our Ontario, as well as there's some crews and subcontractors that are also coming down from Ontario as well as New Brunswick. And we have some crews coming as far as BC. If you want to trick me and ask me whether they're driving or flying, I'm pretty sure most of them are flying. I think most of the bucket trucks have arrived. But I can confirm that outside of this if you'd like.
And then just one final question for the minister here. What is next week going to look like, for students on Monday with schools still closed, some daycare still closed, and what supports are available to help the students and parents?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are going to be working here throughout the weekend to make sure we can get as many students and staff back into our classrooms on Monday. We know that is the very best place for them. As I had mentioned earlier, currently we have 31 schools that will be ready to go for Monday, 27 that we're still waiting confirmation on, and 4 that unfortunately will not be able to open. As it relates to the kids in class, I'm hoping that they can expect a relatively return to school. The lunch program will be provided, and learning will continue as normal as possible. Certainly for those that unfortunately aren't able to attend due to closures, we'll have staff checking in on them, making sure that there's respite services available. School Food Inc. has indicated that they're willing to deliver school food programs to the wellness centers as well. So we'll make sure that there's food in those bellies. And we're going to be there to support our students and staff throughout the coming days. We know that this is challenging, and I'd love to know today that 100% of our schools are opening on Monday, but that's just not the reality. I think we've done really well, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been involved in the cleanup efforts. It's been a tremendous united front on this, and really looking forward to welcoming most students back on Monday.
Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, how about Jack from CTV?
So I do have one question. I think it'd be helpful. Some people already have power back. Some people still have trees across the road. So if someone could speak to kind of the way that you prioritize so that they can better understand why they have that dichotomy.
Well, I don't know how to. Yeah.
I can speak to it primarily for power if you want me to get rolling.
Sure, start there. Yeah.
Okay, so when we think of our, at Maritime Electric in terms of our system across Prince Edward Island, and I'll take a minute to explain what we've done through other storms as well. So the assessment of this storm, in addition, as we look at our underwater submarine cables that connect us to New Brunswick, so that's a check, they're okay. When we looked at our transmission system from tip to tip across the province, it fared far better off than it did during Hurricane Dorian. So while we had some areas that were of concern, it's basically been trees and debris around there, and so that's been solid and strong. So that's a check. Across our substations, over 30 of them from tip to tip across P.E.I. as we went through, no major damage there. So the real issue for us has been the hundreds of communities across P.E.I. where either we've had access issues through roads that have done a significant amount of work over the last 5 or 6 days to make sure that we've been able to get to our sites and to get to those areas in those communities. It's a tremendous amount to make sure that it's clear to do the line and meticulous work in that respect. So as we go line by line in community, and we're talking thousands of kilometers of line, we have to manually check and inspect that to make sure when we get ready to re-energize that it's safe to do so. And that's what we've been working on primarily. In terms of priority, our priorities are key infrastructure and the most numbers of customers that we can get on at any time. The first thing that we did at the beginning of this storm, once the assessment was completed and we were able to work in parallel with our crews, is make sure that we had the hospital on and the Irving Tankard Farm to make sure that fuel was absolutely key in making sure that people had that, followed quickly by emergency hospitals and making sure that there was then access to particularly grocery stores, gas stations, et cetera, across the province. So we're also very concerned about whether it be seniors' homes, fire stations, police stations, making sure that that's critical and that that is handled. So I can honestly say that hand in hand, Maritime Electric doesn't clear roads, so it's very much been an effort coordinated primarily by the province with transportation, as well as the assistance of partners that have come in, primarily the armed forces, but also many contractors across the island. So I think it's fair to say that it's been more of a hand-in-hand, parallel approach together, community by community.
Okay. And one more. You mentioned a few times that we were looking to have most people back up by Monday at the latest. How long, much longer do you expect it'll take for the people who are those individual outages you talk about?
Yes. So in Dorian, Hurricane Dorian, I don't mean to keep referring back to that, but it's the closest storm and the most similar storm if you look at the overlay when Dorian hit us, and then when we look at what I called before Fiona really hit us is Dorian plus plus. So Fiona hit us, and then we looked at how it hit all the communities across Prince Edward Island. So to answer that question, we were into 10, 11 days during Dorian on those individual outages. So that's one person at your house, one customer, one household. The other piece is some people weren't able to get electricians and some people weren't able to get that resource. So some of them and cottage owners may have been into a week or two on top of that as well. So in terms of me being able to estimate at this point, I don't know if it's going to be a week or 10 days at this point. I think I'll have a better understanding a little closer to Sunday or Monday morning. And I say that because of the number of mass reports that we have from our customers right now. So having that number, if we do that breakdown, we could technically have 1 to 2 crews per day, which normally our crews would handle anywhere from 5 to 15 orders a day. So when we get all the communities back on, if we have 1,000 people that have mast issues, we could be in a situation where we have a crew being able to work directly with a customer 1 to 2 per day. So it's hard for me at this point, but I think people need to understand that we're also keeping the crews here as long as we need the majority of them and as long as they're efficient to do so. We can't have people and crews sitting down, sitting back, or doing unnecessary work, which none of them want to do anyway. So for us, I just want to make sure that you know that when we get these communities back, we're not sending everybody home right away. So if with all due respect, if it's okay if I answer that in a little more detail on Monday, I'll take that away from here today.
All right, thank you. That's it for me.
Now we have some of our friends in the media online. You want to begin with Logan, maybe from The Guardian? Logan, are you there?
I am there. I called Red Cross this morning to register, and there was no mention of the $250, but I was told everyone or anyone affected in P.E.I. by Fiona will be receiving $1,000. Can you clarify what that's about?
I think there might be some confusion with Nova Scotia, but Bill, would you want to be able to handle some of the details on that?
Yes, thank you, Premier, and thank you for the question. And certainly apologies for some confusion with that particular statement. There are various programs for each province, and they all have different criteria and eligibility criteria. So it's not to suggest that in any other province, through the Red Cross or other ways that we're aware of, anyway, that there's every household is receiving $1,000, or every household that was impacted, I should say, by Hurricane Fiona. There are some very specific programs in other provinces based on impact. So again, apologies if that was shared with you from, as you identifying as someone who was calling from Prince Edward Island. That was certainly a crossed wire, and we'll take that back to make sure that messaging is a little tighter so that people are definitely communicating the very concise messaging for islanders looking for assistance on the island.
Okay. This support, the $250, is for one issue that tenants will be facing, the groceries that basically everybody had to throw out. what other supports will be coming for people who've either been displaced, had things damaged. I had something fall on my windshield that cost $400 that wasn't insured. What support will be coming for tenants and that have those kind of issues?
It's a great question, and that's something that, as I've been trying to indicate over the last couple of days, Logan, we very much try to feel our way through this, trying to identify those of the most pressing need that we know, and the more programs we announce, the more we learn where others are falling through the cracks, so to speak, or other things that we could do. So it's been all hands on deck, and we're trying to assess everything from that perspective and others that you have raised there. But we will just continue in the coming days to try to do what we can to help as many as we can. And the more and more we learn about what those needs are, the better we're able to react as quickly as we can. But certainly trying to do everything as possible to help.
And what about buildings that have been severely damaged? What is going to be done to ensure that landlords actually make those repairs in a timely fashion so that people aren't displaced?
Yeah, obviously, we all know the housing challenges that we face here before Fiona, and we know there's some impacts following Fiona. So it's obviously something that we're looking at through our Department of Social Development and Housing. I mean, obviously, if you own a building, you would like to get it repaired in a certain amount of time. Sure, there's some financial obligations there, but you also have the obligation for those who are living there to make sure they're looked after as well. So we'll try the best we can to partner with everybody and to make sure that work has gotten done. But I mean, that's part of when we talk about the long grind back as we make our way back through this. It's not just getting the power on and getting the debris cleaned up. It's then getting all of that other work done, many of the things that you mentioned there. But we really, with winter coming, we want to try to do everything we can to get it done as fast as possible and to see the least amount of people as possible impacted.
Some of these repairs will be pretty extensive, and under the current legislation around rent evictions, in order to rent evict someone, there has to be repairs so extensive that the tenant cannot stay there. That's likely to be the case for some of these people. What's going to be done to ensure that landlords will not be using this as an opportunity to do renovations and jack up the price and rent evict tenants?
I mean, you raise a really good question there, and I don't know if I have the answer for that right now. To be honest, Logan, I know that our staff have been working at this and other avenues to try to figure out our best way through this. And I think I started off our briefings here by saying that we're faced with many questions. Most we don't have answers to, but we're working to try to get as many answers as we can in that regard. But I would think that we have seen, for the most part, through all of this, the very best of Islanders, and we've seen the best nature of Islanders, and I would really hope and expect that to continue. And remember that we've all been impacted here, and this isn't the time to gouge somebody or try to throw something at somebody that they really don't need right now. So I would appeal to everyone's great nature, but it's something that we'll be working on through social development and housing to see what we can do.
I've seen pictures and heard stories about seniors living in the dark for the last week. Some of these are government-owned buildings. Why have they not been moved to shelters?
Yeah, we've heard some of those stories as well. I know the minister was moving about the last couple of days, and we're working to address them. I think that just the size of the storm has opened our eyes really to a lot of these things. We will move anyone to where they need to be. Our first choice would obviously be to get their current locations up and operational to the best we can. But I think we're dealing with each building on an individual type basis, and the minister's been on top of that and will continue to be. But yeah, it's been difficult to hear.
There's been some talk of, in preparation for future storms, potentially burying power lines, taking major steps. This could be an opportunity to make infrastructure changes. Is that something that if Maritime Electric was interested in doing, would the province support them, provide funding for that?
Yeah, we've talked about that a number of times on the briefing here, and we've talked about it offline leading up to Fiona, just in the general conversations that we have on, I talk with Maritime Electric at least 4 or 5 times a year in our general meetings, and we talk about things like that, and I think with the changing climate and the more severity and regularity of things like this, we have to be looking at opportunities of how we can try our best to avoid some catastrophic damage. We do know there's significant cost to that, and there's significant logistical challenges to doing it as well. But we're open to having a conversation and to work with our utility to do that. The federal government has expressed interest in doing that, and we'll continue to explore it. But right now, the effort has been just to try to reestablish what we have here and get things back to normal, because there's still 35,000 islanders without power, and that's been our priority right now.
Just got a couple more here. With the rebate going out to employers, what will be done to ensure that all employers actually use that and distribute money to their workers? If they didn't have workers coming in, they could just not do this. What's being done to make sure every single employer does this?
Yeah, well, I remember when Bill was answering the very first question, I was thinking it was first question from Sheehan, actually, and it was, that the biggest responsibility we have is to get money out as quickly as we can, but we also have a responsibility to make sure that this is accountable, that we have not just the Auditor General, but we have the taxpayers of P.E.I. who expect us to be accountable, and we also have, there's a protection of privacy that is critical to this as well, of people's personal information. So that goes into all of these things. For the most part, most of the programs that we distributed through Dorian and COVID, were subscribed by those who needed them, and the accountability was wonderful. Look, we live in a world where are people going to sometimes try to take advantage of something? Yes. This program is designed to help those workers who are missing shifts or missing hours or missing money because a natural disaster has come and has tipped our island upside down. So I would hate to think there'd be somebody out there that would take advantage of that, but we do have an oversight and an accountability of this, and we will follow up to make sure that the money is gone to where it's supposed to go. And again, I would appeal to the good nature of islanders to, if you own a business and you're claiming money for people for lost wages, that you give it to those who lost the wages.
Last ones are back to housing. Just before this all happened, IRAC announced a 5 to 10% rent increase, depending on how your building is heated. Minister McKay responded very strongly to that, saying that would not allow it, essentially. I don't know all that much about how this exact stuff works, but from what I understand, government has some power to potentially table legislation this fall. Will your government do that to stop?
Full stop, yes.
And with that, does your government affirm that housing is a human right?
Always have, always will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cody, CBC, are you there, Cody?
Yeah, I'm here. So what are the next, this one's for Kim, so what are the next 72 hours looking like for Islanders as we're getting the power back on? What do we hope to be at by Monday morning?
Well, right now, what we're planning on, based on what our crews are telling us in the field and our restoration efforts, which are, generally taking and I'm summarizing, but in terms of when we put of all the jobs that we have, that we've completed or have to complete, that we're looking at about 6,500 customers per day. So we still could be into those thousands still on Monday and into Monday night. And that's the best case scenario that I have right now. I do have the large pockets of communities that we believe are probably going to be some of the longest into Monday, which we're going to post on our website this afternoon, as well as share that with EMO, of course, from a planning perspective. We haven't really been able to predict all of those areas as succinctly as we like, but we are trying to make sure that people have as much information as they have so that they can plan the rest of today, tomorrow, Sunday, and into Monday.
From either a government or Maritime Electric standpoint, what's going to be done for those major pockets?
You mean those who aren't coming on, Cody? Sorry?
Yeah, the ones that are going to be quite a bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we tried to lay out there in my opening statement there, is that, we've been working with and continue to work with Maritime Electric to try to the best extent we can determine who those individuals are within those pockets, determine what help they need, and to try to respond the very best that we can to individuals and families. And so that's where our efforts will be. We want to make sure there's warming stations or reception centers as close as possible if there are facilities to do so, but also make sure all of those individuals have as much, of the necessities that they need to make life a little bit more tolerable when we know it's getting on days and days without electricity. So we know the challenge there. We're just going to try to do whatever we can to help in partnership with Maritime Electric.
If you hop over to Nova Scotia Power, you can see the outage map shows jurisdictions with outages and even estimated restoration times for some communities, like down to the hour. So is there capacity for Maritime Electric to implement something like that in the future? Is the company considering that?
Well, I think that's a good question, and again, something that's on everybody's mind. So let me begin by talking about, I don't know the specific damage that's happened in those areas, and I haven't been on their map. But what I know about the restoration map, because I spend a fair bit of time when we're not in a storm situation looking at other people's maps and the ability in which they can communicate to the customer. So some utilities do give a blanket restoration as best they can, days out. For us in our situation, that we've been able to do is we go down to the customer in that minute amount of detail and try to make sure that we do the daily assessment piece versus trying not to be inaccurate. And at the same time, when the storm began, and I'll speak specifically about Fiona, it was a day or two on the assessment mode because of the timing of the storm. So with Hurricane Dorian, we had all of our crews up and going at 7 in the morning after the hurricane had hit us. With Fiona, in its ending and getting our crews, we only had about 5 hours of daylight into Saturday. So really, when you look into Friday or into Sunday and getting those crews on the road, it was really a day or two in terms of that assessment mode before we truly started doing some of that restoration piece. So if I circle back to your question, your begin at the beginning when you asked specifically about are we looking at it, yes, we are. We've made updates in our map over the past 5 or 6 years, and we continue to make updates as a result of Hurricane Dorian. One of the things that we are looking at, and we are going to be applying to IRAC over the next couple of months, we've spent about a year working on even a customer information system that would include a mapping option, as well as many other features as well, and that is something that we are looking at as a follow-up from Dorian specifically that we've been working on, which would enable the smart meter technology in the next number of years. So those are the things that we are specifically looking at for improvements for our customers. When Dorian ended, we had a list of over 55 items that we've been working on since then, everything from chainsaw oil to scheduling from accommodations to food for our crews, a laundry list of things that probably today may seem quite obvious, but sometimes if you don't write them down in an event and you go back to take a look, you may even forget a week later when you're in the minute, and these are the types of things that we're looking at. So these are the things that Maritime Electric focuses on. We talk readiness and storm probably on a weekly basis, talking about how we prepare. We meet as a team at least twice a year to talk about what we call outage readiness from a seasonal perspective, from a supply perspective. So if you may have noticed some of the things that I talked to you about because I'm asked every day, do we have enough equipment? Are we prepared? These are all key learnings that we've learned from previous storms, whether that be for poles, whether that be for wires and the pieces of equipment that we need. So those have all been learnings from the storm. So right now we still get poles in, we're still getting wires in, we're still getting supplies in.
Understood. This is perhaps to you both again, talking about Dorian quite a bit. So what measures did we take after Dorian to shore up infrastructure for the next big storm? And how do we build stronger for the next one coming?
Tanya, do you want to start that? I mean, some of the things we might have learned from Dorian that we've implemented? Or,
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'll certainly pass it over to Kim because she can talk about the infrastructure on the power system. But after Dorian, we actually conducted an after action with third-party agency, Calian, and they did a very in-depth review of all the activities. It was typically very focused on EMO and our operations, but we engaged with all of our stakeholders, with municipalities, public as well, to basically ask the question, how could we do better? So that is one of our first things that we do at EMO. We're always into the continuous improvement model, and we are asking ourselves every single day, we ask ourselves, how can we do better than we did yesterday? In fact, as part of our ops briefing that we do every single morning, we remind all of our folks to document those after action items so that we can have them documented so we're not having to forget them in a few months down the road. But we implemented several things. I think the key one that I would want to stress is the communication to public. We recognized in Dorian we didn't have power. We didn't have communications to a lot of people. People couldn't hear us. We might have been talking, but if you didn't have internet and you didn't have power, you couldn't hear what the message was. So we strived in the following year when we had concerns of Hurricane Teddy making landfall. We started doing these daily briefings in advance and then throughout while we were in response mode. So that's why we've implemented, that's why we're here every day, is to share the information, and we're pushing that out in every avenue that we possibly can. If I say from equipment or infrastructure, our space, we've made some significant changes to our Provincial Operations Centre to make sure that we have capabilities to not only run kind of when power goes down, but also remotely, which really was in a full effect during COVID. I think that's probably the summary of what I can have, but I certainly will ask Kim to kind of pop in on the power side.
Sure, thanks, Tanya. There's been a number of things that we did as well. I mean, we've expanded when I think of our phone system and our phone lines. We also, kept many of our ground lines. But I guess the other thing that I can also say is that we have layers of redundancy built into our systems. So not only on a communication side, but also as we go into communities. So if we have what we call internally as a loop for energy, where it's going to flow, and where we backfeed, and where other areas if we have to send it through another way to get to a community energized if there's damage in that area. The other piece that we've been able to do is we've been spending the last year and a half talking about the vulnerability and potential of our systems from a climate change perspective. That's been a key focus for our team, and we will be releasing a report to the public at the end of this year talking about the system vulnerability assessment that we've done for P.E.I. from the next 20 to 50 years. There's going to be low, medium, and high risks in there based on best utility practices throughout North America, as well as working with climate scientists to help us in that area. So that's a key piece of long-term planning. The other thing is you can't really just plan to build a substation or build a new piece of infrastructure overnight. We're always talking years out, all the planning that we're doing, and we have some of the smartest people in our company helping us to plan long-term, and that's something that we have a department that does every day, as well as making sure that the power stays on and that our system is strong. So in terms of, like many of our customers, we never want to have the power out, but we need to also be thinking about what's it going to look like in the next 10 years. How many more people are going to be living here? As we electrify, what's that going to look like in terms of our infrastructure? How do we keep building and growing to make sure that we're able to continue to power our customers 24/7? So that's what we're working on.
So directly following that, it was said earlier this week that our infrastructure here is built to Canadian standards or code. So is P.E.I.'s experience here the Canadian standard? Should we have more of a regional standard with more and stronger infrastructure, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think you raise a good point, Cody. I think, as jurisdictions and regions and really as a country with the changing climate and the more dramatic weather that we're seeing, I think that is really making us think about how we build and what we build and where we build it, quite frankly. And I think that's, that's part of the process that's really underway when we talk about, adapting to the climate change. That's things we talk about. I mean, when you look at what they're doing at the P.E.I. Climate Change Adaptation Center out in St. Peters, I mean, they are, using drones and other technology to determine which are the most vulnerable, banks to erode in a high windstorm, for example. And we're using that to, with our farm community and with our, architects and other things like that. So, I mean, that is exactly what we're all trying to figure out here. I think what we know is we can't keep doing everything the way we've always done it. I think we have made some significant changes and advancements in previous years, but we have to go further. And I don't know where the end is, but it's an ongoing process.
So you think something like a regional standard would make more sense than a national standard?
Well, I think a national standard is probably fine, but I think it has to be updated to, by region perhaps, because, there might be some more severe weather, coastal weather in places like Atlantic Canada or British Columbia. But I mean, they also see other challenges in the prairie provinces and other places with forest fires and everything. All of those things, I think, are part of the equation. And perhaps it's a national standard with some jurisdictional, carve-outs or additions, perhaps. I don't know. Good question.
Couple more, and I'll get. Has there been any consideration about something like a vulnerable people registry on P.E.I.? A list of people who may be living on their own or have health considerations, because ground and search and rescue is checking in on people. So that kind of thing, where we have a list of people that could be checked in on, or people experiencing homelessness, et cetera.
Yeah, well, certainly anyone that we deal with in that respect through many of our different government programs and departments would be, I'm not sure it's on one big master list, but when we go through episodes such as what we're going through here, those are the people that we begin to reach out to and check on. And, but I mean, we also know that's an imperfect science as well. But, I think when we're through of this, Cody, I mean, I think we'll look at all of the suggestions, like that and so many others to see how that could be, incorporated perhaps into the future. But I mean, anyone that I know that's on the, that we deal with on a provincial basis that, when we go through something, this, we begin to do the reach outs and, that's who we've designed our immediate response relief programs for, et cetera. But, I mean, I'd certainly be open to any good idea that can help us.
One final one. Could you recap for us real quick money that people need now and can get now? What is that? Where can they get that?
I mean, I don't know if I want to go through and talk about everything that we've announced over the last 3 or 4 days, but I mean, what we talked about today with the Red Cross, for example, is something that we're hoping will catch a bigger, group of islanders who are impacted. I mean, we've gotten money out to our NGOs and not-for-profits who deal with those on the ground each and every day, so they can get money out a little bit more quicker than anybody else in that regard. As I say, like the list of programs that we put out are really designed to help those in the most immediate need and knowing that most islanders have some type of need, and we're sort of identifying our programs from that and getting it out. But there's I'm hopeful and confident that if you need something right now, there's a place for you to get that, and that's what we've been trying to accomplish in these first few days.
And no income threshold for support on Canadian Red Cross. Is that right, Bill?
That is correct. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. That's all for me. Thanks.
Cody.
Lindsay, the Canadian Press.
Hi there. I'd like to ask the Premier if he can tell me about the impact he's hearing on particularly the fishing industry, given the impacts of the storm, of course.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay, for the question. I know that our fall fishery in LFA 25, or fall lobster fishery, hasn't yet been completed, but it has been significantly impacted. Many of our boats come out of the water pre-Fiona, but it's been a bit of an effort to get them back in the water because of fallen trees and other problems with debris, etc. There's a lot of lost gear, I'm sure, gear that has been moved or tangled out there. As a lobster industry who has worked so hard to protect the resource, the last thing we want is what we call ghost gear or lost gear out there. So that's been impacted, but we're soldiering on. Our mussel industry has been dramatically impacted. It's quite frankly a mess, and we're trying to work with our mussel producers and processors to find a way to get through the initial shock of this and find a way forward. It's the same with oysters. Our mussel industry provides about 85% of the mussels to the North American market. So to say we're a significant player would be an understatement. The growth in our oyster sector across North America for fresh and frozen has been, has grown, exponentially over the last couple of years, and I hate to see that impacted. So, those in our fishery have been hit pretty hard by this. If you make a living on the water and you just come through the hurricane that we've come through with the storm surge, there's very little that hasn't been impacted in the water.
Thank you so much for that, Premier.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if you have a sense of which parts of the province or which specific areas the fisheries have been impacted most. Perhaps it's everywhere. I'm just wondering some more specifics there about where damage is most severe.
Yeah, so our LFA fall fishery would run from, Borden, Victoria on the south side up until a little bit past, West Point, up around there. So that has been dramatically hit there. There's a lot of damage in our bays and estuaries all across P.E.I. with our mussels and oysters. The North Shore, we kind of bore the brunt of the wind and all of the impacts up there, and that's where a big bulk of the storm surge was as well. So anything up around, Tracadie, North Rustico, Stanley Bridge, Cavendish area up through there has been hit pretty hard. Malpeque Bay, and I'm probably leaving out New Frage and Redhead. It's very few places along the coast haven't been impacted in some way, shape, or form.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody else on there? Is there anybody else?
Joey Black here.
Okay, hi Joe. You still there, Joey?
Hello, I'm here.
How are you, buddy?
Good. Premier, just wondering, the gift cards that you announced of $100 for seniors, I've noticed some of them they're not able to use them at any Sobeys stores.
I don't know about that, Joe. I'd have to follow up a little bit more on that. I would... I'm hoping that Sobeys is one of our major partners in this, so I'm hoping that it would be workable, but I'd have to ask somebody and try to get back to you, Joe, on that, but really hope that that program is as efficient as it can be and people can use it to buy food or other provisions as fast as possible.
Because I was told that they weren't accepting them.
Yeah, as I say, Joe, I don't know. I know we're partnering with Sobeys significantly on that program, so I would be ever so hopeful their participating stores would accept them, but I'll look into that. I don't know the full extent of that, but as I say, I hope that is not the case, but I'll get someone to look into that immediately.
Thank you. And I've got one more for you. Either yourself or Kim can jump in on this one. How will the power farms or wind farms be able to stay online with you're on the power grid? And are they going to be able to withstand any more hurricanes?
Well, right now, in terms of the wind farms, I would have to go and double check, Joe. I know that the armed forces were actually assisting with some of the debris and tree removal along those lines, but I can follow up on that more specifically and get back to you on that. I also had some follow-up answers for you from the other day that I thought I was going to talk to you, and we didn't have a chance to connect. So I can give you that information if you'd like.
Certainly, that'd be great, Kim.
Anything else,
That's
Joe?
all the questions.
Yep.
One for Bill. Is there any other way new local businesses can help out with the relief fund for people hit by Fiona?
Thank you very much for the question. Indeed, many businesses, large and small, help to raise awareness, if nothing else, of the appeal from the Canadian Red Cross or with the Canadian Red Cross. In some cases, businesses of various sizes encourage their workforce to provide contributions, and often employers will do a matching contribution as well to this specific fund. Excuse me. Yeah, so it's certainly raising awareness and making sure that people are aware, as their customers are aware that it's happening, is always encouraged and welcomed. We've seen that in other events that we've launched an appeal for specific responses, and certainly given the significance of the destruction throughout the Atlantic region, we would welcome that by any means necessary. So thank you.
I believe that's it.
Thank you very much, Joey, and all the members of our media. Thank you to the Minister, to Tanya and Kim, and to Bill for joining us virtually. We appreciate that. Just an update for everybody who might be wondering. Tomorrow and Sunday, we will continue to provide updates. EMO and the government and Maritime Electric will do so twice per day by press release or through our social channels. And then we'll return to a live briefing like this on Monday with a full update. So we'll try to connect with members of the media and public a couple of times each day on Saturday and Sunday, and then we'll return back here with a live update. So with that, I'd say thanks again to everyone for participating, and I wish a good weekend to all Islanders.